This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. French President Emmanuel Macron is hosting several African leaders in his country this week. The goal is to boost the fight against Islamic extremism on the continent. The presidents of Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, and Mauritania arrived in the French capital amid growing concern that radical Muslims are continuing to kill thousands of people, including Christians. For example, the African terror group known as Al-Shabaab has reportedly killed 25 Christians in Kenya in the past 5 weeks. According to International Christian Concern, among them are 3 Christian teachers who were killed Monday by this Somali-based terror organization. In addition to groups that are affiliated with al-Qaeda, ISIS is also making inroads across the continent. President Macron is urging the United States to redouble efforts in fighting the scourge of radical Islam in Africa.
If the Americans were to decide to withdraw from Africa, it would be bad news for us. I confirm it. I hope I can convince President Trump that the fight against terrorism, in which he is deeply engaged, is also at stake in this region.
Macron believes ISIS is the most dangerous terror group in Africa at the moment. Our senior international correspondent George Thomas has covered the rise of radical Islam in Africa for years, and he joins us now with more. Now, George, I understand you are heading back to sub-Saharan Africa soon. Yeah. One place where Christians are suffering the most right now is Nigeria. There's some talk about appointing a special U.S. envoy to that country. What's that all about?
Well, partly, Mark, because the situation in Nigeria, which happens to be the continent's most populous country, is facing a tremendous assault against Christians. In 2019 alone, the reports are that, according to a British human rights group, more than 1,000 Nigerian Christians lost their lives. Over the last 5 years, that total dramatically rises to over 5,000. And so this is a nation that really is at the heart of the threat against Christians on the continent. More people are dying, more Christians are dying in Nigeria than anywhere else in Africa. And so there are calls by some human rights groups that the Trump administration has to put together this special envoy who will present the case to the president about the ongoing threats against Christians in Nigeria.
French President Macron says that ISIS is the biggest threat on Africa, the continent of Africa right now. Do you agree?
I mean, not really. I mean, I think partly because Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab have had a long history on the continent for 10, 15, 20 years. But he is right in one way, in the sense that ISIS, because we've driven them from their areas of territory, for example, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, they're looking for new places to fester. And what better place than the African continent? I mean, you look at, there are no roads, there's no electricity, there are large swaths of this continent where there is no security apparatus. And it is in this sort of vacuum that the cancer of ISIS, not just ISIS, but other Islamic radical groups tend to flourish. And so I'm not surprised that ISIS is beginning to make inroads. For example, Mark, you remember the horrific beheading of 11 Nigerians on December 26th. The group that claimed responsibility was ISIS. They were saying that this was in revenge for the killing of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, late last year.
The persecution, though, is happening while Christianity is exploding in Africa, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the silver lining in all of this. You know, there's a saying in Christendom that the blood of the martyrs is the seedbed of the church. And what is truly happening today, I've documented it, and I'm going to be doing that in the next several weeks, is the explosion of Christianity. If you look at everywhere from south of the equator, sub-Saharan Africa, to south of the equator, all the way to the southern tip of Africa, is where Christianity is exploding. Millions of people. You know, they would say many years ago, there were probably about 2 million Christians on the African continent. Today, the estimates, the rough estimates, are there are about 230 million to 250 million Christians on this beautiful continent. And so that is the story that we've been telling you about. But in the midst of the growth of the church, obviously there is this danger of radical Islam that continues to spread across the continent.
And George, quickly,
Sure.
we need to point out that it's not just Christians who are suffering at the hands of radical
This is
Muslims.
a very important point, Mark. I mean, the majority today, since 9/11, we need to be very clear. Sure, Christians around the world are being assaulted, they're being targeted for their faith, but by and large, Mark, the majority of those who are losing their lives at the hands of ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, the whole alphabet soup of terrorism around the world are Muslims. And we've got to keep that in mind. We need to continue to pray for our Christians, brothers and sisters, but also for Muslims around the world, especially in places like Africa, the Middle East, that continue to bear the brunt of this evil scourge.
All right, George Thomas, as always, thanks for your insights.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Moving now to Iran, the judiciary said today arrests have been made for the accidental shooting down of a Ukrainian passenger plane last week that killed all 176 people on board just after takeoff from Tehran. The judiciary said the arrest came after extensive investigations, but did not say how many people had been arrested or who they were. Iran's president also called for a special court to be set up to probe the incident. The announcement came amid protests by Iranians in recent days over the downing of the jet and apparent attempts by senior officials to cover up the cause of the crash. In Israel, potentially bad news for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A key committee of the parliament voted to allow debate about immunity from prosecution of Netanyahu. As Chris Mitchell reports, the development has the potential to derail Netanyahu's political future.
The committee's decision would form a group that would determine if Prime Minister Netanyahu should be granted immunity. The parliamentary move was mainly engineered by Netanyahu's main political rival, the Blue and White Party, who does not want Netanyahu to be granted immunity. At the beginning of the year, Netanyahu announced he would ask for immunity until the end of the next Knesset's term.
Many of you think, because that's what they've told you, that immunity for elected officials is granted in perpetuity, that it allows you not to stand trial ever. That's simply untrue. According to the law, immunity is always temporary. It is canceled with the end of the term of the Knesset that granted it.
His request came after Israel's Attorney General said he would indict Netanyahu on charges of fraud, bribery, and breach of trust. Netanyahu took the option to ask for temporary immunity so he wouldn't stand trial till the Knesset's term was over. But the decision was a political gamble. If the current Knesset decides Netanyahu should not receive immunity, his trial could go on much sooner than expected and could affect his chances in the next election. National elections are scheduled for March 2nd, the third time in a year that Israelis have gone to the polls, since no one political party has been able to form a coalition government. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The United States international relations were a big talking point for Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who attended the Silicon Valley Leadership Group in San Francisco yesterday. Pompeo answered a slew of questions on Iran, North Korea, and Russian interference in elections. Pompeo told the crowd of aspiring entrepreneurs that intelligence sharing relationships with European allies who use Chinese tech in their 5G infrastructure are, quote, potentially at risk.
And I remind them, and this is an imperfect analogy, and I'm deeply aware of that, but none of us would have installed Soviet technology, right? We would have never allowed our private citizens to go to work across that. This is technology that the Chinese Communist Party will have access to this information. How they'll get it, when they'll get it, how much of it they'll decide to have access to, we can all debate. But make no mistake about it, they'll have the capacity to get at this deeply personal information. It makes it harder. As someone who ran the Central Intelligence Agency for 18 months, if it's not done properly, the close information sharing relationships we have with these countries are potentially at risk.
The U.S. has expelled 21 students from Saudi Arabia following the deadly shooting at a military base in Florida. The December 6th attack was carried out at the Pensacola Naval Air Station in Florida. 3 U.S. sailors were killed and 8 others injured. Officials say 17 of the 21 military trainees they deported had jihadi literature in their possession. The shooter, Lieutenant Saeed al-Shamrani, who was killed in the attack, had been reading and posting jihadi messages on social media just 2 hours before the deadly rampage. Attorney General William Barr declared the shooting an act of terror.
This was an act of terrorism. The evidence shows that the shooter was motivated by jihadist ideology.
He harbored anti-U.S. military and anti-Israel sentiments, and that he thought violence was necessary to defend Muslim countries.
Barr says Saudi Arabia has agreed to review the conduct of all 21 Saudi trainees to see if they should face military discipline and to send back anyone the U.S. later determines should face charges. Democrats are heading into their final debate tonight in Iowa before the Iowa caucuses on February 3rd. Only 6 candidates will be on the stage, and polls show a tight and changing race, with the Des Moines Register poll showing Bernie Sanders ahead in the state, and a new Monmouth poll showing Joe Biden in the lead. Many Democratic insiders are growing concerned that Sanders could possibly win the party's nomination, and they worry that the socialist candidate would alienate the swing voters they need to beat President Trump in November. The debate also comes amid a controversy about Sanders supposedly telling his fellow progressive Elizabeth Warren that he did not believe a woman could win. He denies it, but she's confirmed it. And for more political news and analysis, be sure to catch Faith Nation this evening. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, why 2 former students are suing a well-known Christian college and the impact it could have on several schools.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. 2 former Fuller Seminary students are suing the school, saying that Fuller violated anti-discrimination laws when it dismissed them for their same-sex marriages. The suit is believed to be the first of its kind, and the ruling could have some major ramifications for Christian colleges and universities that receive federal funding. Our Heather Sells spoke with Eric Baxter with the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, who represents Fuller in this case.
Tell us a little bit about this case. Is it the first of its kind in terms of this kind of accusation of discrimination against a Christian school?
Well, Fuller Seminary is one of the largest, if not the largest, Protestant seminary in the world, and for 70 years has been preparing students to teach, serve, and minister according to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And churches and other religious organizations like Fuller for many years have faced these types of claims, and the courts have been unanimous in holding that they have a First Amendment right to select students or ministers who agree to abide by and live according to their religious beliefs.
All right, and tell us a little bit about these two students and their claims.
So these two students both enrolled in Fuller Seminary. When students enroll at Fuller, all of them have to sign a statement that they agree to abide by what Fuller calls its community standards. These include, among other things, standards on marriage, that marriage is a covenant relationship between one man and one woman, and that sexual relations are appropriate only within that marriage. So both of these students agreed to abide by that covenant. One of them, in the complaint now alleges that he was already in a same-sex marriage before he joined. The other entered a same-sex marriage while she was a student, neither disclosed to the school, which was itself a violation of their agreement. And when the school found out that they were not living by this community standards, it regretfully had to dismiss them from the school and help them find places where they could continue their studies consistent with their own religious beliefs.
All right, and with respect to this court case, what is at stake here for Christian colleges across the country?
Well, it's critical, of course, for religious organizations to be able to select their own leaders without interference from the government. And in 2012, the Supreme Court, in a case called Hosanna Tabor, ruled 9-0 that the government, and that includes courts, cannot interfere in who religious organizations select to lead and minister to their followers. And so it's really important in this case, that principle be upheld, that the government cannot tell religious organizations, whether they be Christian, Jewish, Sikh, Hindu, what have you. All religious organizations get to set the standards for who they select as ministers or leaders of their followers.
All right, and explain a little bit. Title IX does bar federally funded educational programs from discrimination on the basis of sex, but dozens of Christian schools, of course, have received exemptions. So does that mean that Fuller has a strong case here?
Yes, it does. The Title IX, as required by the Constitution, exempts religious organizations to the extent that application of Title IX would conflict with their sincerely held religious beliefs. And so the statute automatically exempts, whether schools have received a written letter from the Department of Education, the statute automatically exempts them from Title IX to the extent it would conflict with their religious beliefs. And so for 70 years, Fuller has required its students to abide by its covenant, its community standards on marriage and sexuality, and that right, we believe, will be upheld by the courts in this case.
All right, well, I know a lot of people will be watching this case. Eric Baxter with the Beckett Fund, thanks for your insights.
Thank you.
Coming up, most people want to eat healthy and lose weight, but how exactly do you do it? That story is next.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, In this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain. Get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
The Cleveland Clinic's Dr. Mark Hyman sat down with our Lori Johnson to discuss his new cookbook, which is already a bestseller. It's called Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? Here's a look.
Why do you think this message is catching on so well?
Well, people are so confused about what to eat. You know, one day eggs are good for you, then they're bad. One day fat's bad, then it's good, you know, and it just makes people crazy. And then there's the diet wars, you know, vegan, paleo, low-fat, keto, this, that. And so I wanted to create a common sense approach that's founded on science to help people upgrade their health and upgrade their ingredients in their food and upgrade their biology.
One of my all-time favorite books, in fact, I give this as gifts, even to my mother, is the book right before this called Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? Which to me just captures the frustration people have and the confusion people have, and it's all in here. But this brand new cookbook is a standalone book. You don't need this one to understand it.
If you want to know science, you're geeky like me, you want the backup of why I say what I say, and you know the philosophy I have, which is the Pegan diet, which is it's kind of a joke to make fun at, you know, the paleo and the vegan, the diet wars. Say, look, we all agree on the common sense principles of what to eat. It should be whole, real food, right? It shouldn't be necessarily plant-based, because Twinkies and Honey Nut Cheerios and Frosted Flakes are plant-based, right?
Oh, very good point.
So we want to eat a whole food, a plant-rich diet with lots of fruits and veggies, nuts and seeds, whole grains and beans. And we want a lot of good fats. We want to get rid of the starch and sugar, because that's what drives obesity, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, dementia, you name it. And we also want to eat foods, if they're from animals, that are raised in ways that are humane to the animals, that are good for the planet and don't cause climate change, and that are good for you, which is more grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised animals. And make sure you do the right thing by the animals, because you don't want to mess up our planet and your health and everything. So the factory farm animals are bad. So it goes through, how do you pick from each of the areas what grains, what beans, what fruits, what nuts, what seeds, what veggies? And so I go through all of that in the book, but then the cookbook makes it super simple. So you get to eat the same comfort foods like crimini chili, your turkey lasagna, you got pancakes, lemon, blueberry, grain-free pancakes, and maple harvest crunch with coconut whipped cream. So you don't have to suffer. It's not expensive, it doesn't take a ton of time, and you get to have delicious food that upgrades your biology, your health, and it does it so by just upgrading the quality of the ingredients in your food.
So you mentioned these 4 dishes, which I have to say are spectacular. They're all in this cookbook. And can you go through each one of them individually and tell us what we have here?
Well, we'll start with breakfast.
Okay,
breakfast. You know, everybody loves pancakes. I love pancakes, but you know, most pancakes are just flour and starch and sugar, which causes diabetes. You know, flour raises your blood sugar more than table sugar. So we use hacks, upgrades. We have coconut flour, cassava flour, which is a root, and we use eggs, which is a great source of protein, pasture-raised eggs. We have lemon zest and a lot of yummy little ingredients, a little salt, and it's so simple, so good. And you put the blueberries on there, drizzle maple syrup, and you are not suffering.
Delicious and nutritious. What's next?
And the turkey chili. So, I mean, this is actually not turkey chili. This is crimini chili. So you can, if you're a vegan, you want to use mushrooms. The crimini mushrooms are very meat-like. You can make chili. It's a way to hack in vegetables, so you get to have more carrots, onions, celery, and tomato sauce. Lots of spices. Spices are the medicine cabinet. That's really where your pharmacy is, Pharmacy, like I talk about in my podcast, The Doctor's Pharmacy. And you want to include all those spice ingredients. You can add grass-fed beef if you want, and you put an avocado on top and a cilantro, and it's just such a powerhouse of food as medicine, and it tastes so good. And, of course, you don't have to give up lasagna, but this is a trick lasagna. It looks good, and it tastes good, but it's not bad for you. Why? Because instead of noodles, we use zucchini strips, and we layer the zucchini strips awesome in the pan. We put a little of the turkey chili on the top of that. Layer another zucchini strip, cheddar cheese, but we don't use cow cheese. We use goat cheese.
Goat cheese.
But why do we use goat cheese? Because cow cheese causes problems for a lot of people. It causes gas and digestive issues. It causes congestion. It can cause acne. It can cause inflammation. It's been linked to cancer. But goat cheese is different because the type of protein in the goat milk is very different. It doesn't cause all those symptoms, and people do great. And then you put a little bit of Swiss chard in there. You get the greens, a little basil on top, a little more cheddar cheese on top, and it's just so good. And it takes like 25 minutes to bake in the oven. It's delicious.
Wonderful.
Then,
I'm sold.
And you get dessert.
Dessert. Yeah,
but,
who would have thought that?
Most of the time, our desserts are so bad for us. Sugar is the #1 killer. It causes obesity, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, dementia. They're calling it type 3 diabetes.
Yes.
And we eat way too much, like 152 pounds per person. So you still get to have dessert, but it could be really natural sugar. So we use frozen peaches and cherries.
Wow, lots of information there. You can see more of Lori's interview with Dr. Hyman on healthy living. It's tonight at 9:30 Eastern, and it's only on the CBN News Channel. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after the break.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Christian artist Lauren Daigle sang a stunning rendition of the national anthem last night at the College Football National Championship game.
Moses, can you see by the dawn's early light?
What a gift. Daigle received huge applause from the crowd, which included President Trump and the First Lady following her performance. The singer is a Louisiana native and LSU alum. LSU ended up winning the game 42-25 over defending champs, the Clemson Tigers. And that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Have a great day.